What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel Season 5, the final season. Maisel's over on Prime Video after premiering way back at the end of 2017. It's been a long time coming. I'm going to talk about the finale, the season as a whole, the series as a whole. I'm going to spoil everything in just a second. Before I do, I'll just say that I thought Maisel Season 5 was a kind of up and down mixed bag type season. I liked the way it wrapped up given how it had gone to that point. But I think there's a lot of kind of sins that this series has had that didn't necessarily start with season 5, to be clear, but largely kind of pushed this show into a box. There were some decisions made with season 5 that I didn't care about that much. I just didn't kind of like where they went, and I'll get into all of this. So let's just get into it. Let's just spoil everything. So Maisel season 5, I think the big thing that is a hang up for me with season 5 is the flashbacks, or the flash forwards, really. If you think about what we got with season 5 of Maisel, jumping forward in time, sometimes jumping decades in time, we very quickly learned several key pieces of information with this series. One of which was that Maisel and Midge and Susie fell out and were not on good terms. Midge did become successful, and world famous and all that. Susie also became incredibly successful with many other famous clients. We learned all that information incredibly fast, and to me, it really killed a lot of the dramatic stakes with this season because Marvel's Mrs. Maisel, this whole run has been can Midge make it? Against all odds, this 50s, 1960s housewife, single mother with 2 young kids. Can she become a stand-up comedian in a man's world, in a man's comedy scene? And we've been watching her, go up and down. And I think a big frustration many people have had with this series to this point has been watching the Midge character make a lot of the same mistakes over and over again. Kind of a problem with the writing, a problem with the plotting. And to very quickly in the beginning of season 5, get told that everything people had been kind of wondering about actually did come true. And then we would actually learn some of the details and see that fleshed out after the fact, after the suspense had been killed. I don't know. That's a really weird decision to me. And I think just kind of a product of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel as a series really just went on too long. And I think Amy Sherman Palladino, Dan Palladino, they just weren't as creatively fulfilled and in the mix with making this show anymore. I think this could have been a much tighter, captivating series if it was perhaps smaller in scope in how it worked, That being said, what we got, I was quite disappointed in the killing of the stakes, because alongside that, I feel like we spent a lot of time in season 5 watching a lot of the same old stuff. We watch Midge get put in a situation that's not a good fit for her and watch her make a lot of the same mistakes that we had been accustomed to seeing. In this case, becoming a TV writer on the Gordon Ford show. I liked Reed Scott from Veep as Gordon Ford, like a Tonight Show type stand-in there. Reed Scott's really good at doing that two-faced, swarmy, comedic timing guy. I like that performance. I didn't love that situation for Midge. I did like how it ended in the finale, 4 minutes. I thought watching Midge get that big break with that 4-minute set she does on the Gordon Ford show after seeing how long it took her to pull off getting that spot on the series and all that, and thinking that's not actually going to happen at the end. I like that. However, what would have been really great about this finale if we didn't know that Midge becomes world famous and successful going in. Because then when we see Gordon Ford pull the rug out and say that he's going to put Midge up there as one of his writers and clearly start to just try and embarrass her and be sexist to her as his line of questioning goes, watching that play out in real time, not knowing how it would go, I think that would have been really fulfilling even further than watching her do the 4 minutes and seeing it actually happen, That's just me. Other things that I thought were a bit pedestrian about this series, the Rose storylines, watching her kind of do a lot of the same old stuff, the Matchmaker Mafia stuff, playing out that string again in a whole new season. Just the usual, incompetent homekeeping stuff. It's kind of blah to me, honestly, as much as I love, Rose, love the performance for Maren Hinkle. Abe, I think Abe is generally a highlight of the series. Tony Shalhoub's performance is just so funny. His stuff with the Village Voice, and nothing too great this time. Probably the best moment of Abe, beyond his general comedy. I think his comedy is really funny. especially with the kids this year, with Midge's kids. I thought that was probably some of the funniest stuff. But the scene he has with some of his Village Voice colleagues at the dinner table, where he it's basically like a backdoor introduction of feminism to this series, and having Abe of all people be the spokesman for this, and realizing that he should have done things differently and changing how he thought about stuff. Of course, telling this to a bunch of men who don't necessarily agree with him, doing this in the early 60s, a time that's not mainstream thought. It's like this show, and I think the Paladinos in general have never been super adept at really handling weightier themes like that. But I think it was pretty interesting because the writing matched with Shaloub's performance in that scene, where Shaloub just kind of monologues as Abe waxes on about the regrets he has about how he's acted and things he could have done differently. I thought it was pretty effective for sure. That being said, watching Rose and Abe in the finale rush to try and get a cab and they can't get one, and all the things they do and say as they're running in the city traffic, that's just funny stuff because those they know the comedy. Moish and Shirley, Joel's parents, some of the shtick got a little annoying to me earlier in the season just because I think they can be a bit much, but they also felt like they know exactly what those characters are, and I thought it was ineffective enough, having them get back on good terms in the shower, in the finale, whatever. They're definitely secondary characters in the ensemble. Another mistake that I guess you can't be too hard on the creators, but writing off May in the beginning of episode 1 was pretty stark. Obviously, I think it's a symptom of Joel being on this show, being in this plot, and thus his parents as well, was more a product of series contracts and filling out the ensemble more so than dramatic intention. They had to find ways to keep Joel on the series, and it turns out having this whole romantic subplot with May in the past seasons didn't amount to much of anything. And in the process, they wrote the season, they went into production just as a little movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once began its run, leading to a Best Picture win and a Stephanie Hsu Best Supporting Actress nomination. It would have been really cool if that momentum had carried over onto this show. Would have been an unexpected win for Maisel. Didn't happen, obviously. We don't get a lot of Lenny Bruce in this season. Obviously, the big highlight of season 4, the reason I thought season 4 was the second best season of this series, was really the payoff of Lenny and Midge at the end of season 4. The Lenny Carnegie Hall iconic set, Lenny and Midge finally consummating their attraction, and the conversations they have, on the stage at Carnegie and stuff. That was just so moving, and that was the thing people were most invested in watching this show. I never wanted to see Joel and Midge get back together, and they damn near tried with season 5. Thankfully, they didn't. And I thought it was handled well enough considering they just had to keep Joel on the show. But Lenny, you see him in, I believe it's the beginning of episode 2, which was part of the opening premiere, and he's going off to California. Him and Midge meet at the airport, and I was worried that was going to be the last scene, and they have together. Thankfully, it isn't. That being said, I think the way they handle it's a bit interesting, right? So what we get in the finale, the opening scene in the finale, is Lenny Bruce, Luke Kirby, on set in 1965, and it's a really rough set. It's not funny. It's kind of Lenny droning on about his legal issues, and you can tell it's just not working, and he's definitely a mess. That was actually, in real life, his penultimate show before his death, and that obviously conveys the issues Lenny had that the show had hinted at and shown earlier. And then at the very end of the finale, we see this dinner scene at a Chinese restaurant between Midge and Lenny, which is actually a flashback to later in the night after they got romantically involved in season 4. And just kind of this conversation about Lenny being really the one person, one man, I guess you could say, that truly believe in Midge's talent, Midge's potential and stuff like that. And it's a nice scene. Doesn't necessarily communicate anything new between them, but you understand the origin of the lucky number, fortune cookie piece of paper that Midge had earlier in the episode when she goes on the Going Forward show. So as a result, we never see Midge learn about Lenny's tragic death. We never see how that affects her. We just kind of see her being concerned earlier in the first scene when Susie tells her that he's a mess. That's a choice, for sure. I know this show has always treated Lenny Bruce. Any of the stuff they showed on stage was always like his actual real words. They never added anything. Obviously, everything else is like historical fiction, which is fun. Obviously, we like that. The Lenny Bruce performance from Luke Kirby is probably the single greatest thing this show has done. Obviously, that got 2 Emmy nominations, including a win in Guest Actor category. I would have loved to see more. I would have loved to see how that affected Midge, because frankly, that was the thing I cared about most watching this series through 5 seasons, you know? And again, because season 5 killed all the dramatic stakes and spoiled the fact that Midge is going to make it, obviously I was moved. I thought it was really great watching her kill it on the Gordon Ford show, and you get to see the big break happen. I just wish I would have known if there was some, doubt as a viewer in the moment. Alas. I think my favorite overall episode is episode 6, because that's that Susie roast episode. Thought that was just really funny, great episode. And I think kind of highlights like what this show has been about in season 5 has really been the Midge Susie friendship. That has been like the anchor point that this series has been communicating. Obviously, I'm just speaking for me, was more invested in the Lenny stuff, but clearly the Susie Midge friendship and the ups and downs of that was what this show wanted to communicate. And seeing the flash forward to 2005, the very last scene of the season 5 and series finale, watching Midge in her older years be incredibly successful, but also incredibly isolated despite her wealth. But at least she still had mended her friendship with Susie, and they talk on the phone watching Jeopardy. It's pretty moving. Yeah, man. Marvelous Miss Maisel season 5. Not my favorite season, not my second favorite season, but for all the faults the series had brought into the season, I think it was effective enough way to wrap things up. And obviously, shout out Rachel Brosnahan, truly breakout role. I'd love to see what she's up to next. We know the Paladinos will get up to something soon. And if you think about the legacy of this series, which in its early years was a big, comedy Emmy darling, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is, I think, up there, among the signature Amazon Prime Video series. You think of what those shows would be. It's Fleabag and The Boys and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And, in the years to come, probably Lord of the Rings of Power as well. But Maisel has been a real anchor for Amazon, even as the critical attention, the awards attention, and ratings have declined. It's obviously a smashing success, and probably a example of perhaps TV of the past, right? As we're moving into a different entertainment industry environment with with the economy and the way studios are approaching things and approaching costs of series. This was a lavish period production series with a ensemble cast from an A-list creator. This was not a cheap show to make, and obviously cost doesn't really matter to Amazon, but there's a lot of reporting about the up and down identity of what it means to make content at Amazon. We're seeing that with Citadel right now, so this might end up being the last gasp of a bygone era when it comes to TV filmmaking. We'll see. Obviously too early to say that now. But let me know, how did you feel about Marvelous Mrs. Maisel Season 5? How did you feel about the series as a whole? Let me know. I'll be in the comments. And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.